programme à la fois en créole avec aide Respond Crisis Translation. Christelle ak Cheryl ap servi nou kom interprète. Si wap suiv nou sou Chokarella et Facebook Live et ko bezwen traduksyon, kom ou deja konen, tan pri vin jwen nou sou Zoom. Wap jwen lien Zoom nan en bas premier commentaire là. Tonight's program, as usual, is being held in Creole and English with live interpretation provided by Respond Crisis Translation with Christelle and Cheryl, serving as our interpreters. If you are watching on Chokarella or Facebook Live and you'd like translation, please feel free to join us on the Zoom link on the pin in the comments below. Please, ladies, take it away. Christelle?
Hello. Sorry. Hello, everyone. This is Christelle. Happy to be back, and I'm going to read for you how to access the Zoom functions, in order to have interpretation, live interpretation. So today we will be using the Zoom interpretation function. If you are using a computer, you will see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen. If you are on a tablet or a phone, click on More or the three dots, and you will see a menu that includes an option called Language Interpretation. To listen to the interpretation, click the globe icon or Language Interpretation, then choose your language channel. If you're using a tablet or a phone, click Done. If you can't hear the interpreter on your channel, please ask for help in the chat or raise your hand. Help us promote language justice. Speak slowly and clearly, especially if you are reading. Mute your mic when you aren't speaking. If you do not understand all languages spoken in this space, please join the English channel. If you join a language channel, only speak the language of that channel. And my colleague Shirley will read the instructions for Creole speakers. Thank you.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Jodi a nou pral utiliser fonction interprétation Zoom nan ki si wap utilize yon ordinateur, wap pre yon icône globe nan pati en bas écran lan à droite. Si ou sur yon tablette ou soit yon téléphone, cliquez sous plus ou soit trois petits points yo et puis wap pre yon menu qui gen la donne yon option qui relè interprétation langue. Pour koute interprétation an, cliquez sous icône globe là ou soit sous interprétation langue. Après ça, choisis canal langue. Si wap utilize yon téléphone ou soit yon tablette, cliquez sous fini. Si ou pas attendre interprète là, sous canal ou mande aide dans chat là ou soit lever main. Aidez-nous encourager justice linguistique, parler doucement et clair si tout si wap li. Fermez microphone ou le ou pas parler. Si ou pas comprendre toute langue yo parler dans espace ça, tant pis rentre dans canal anglais ya. Si ou rentre dans yon canal langue, parler langue canal ça seulement. Merci en pile, fait nous connaître sou gen question dans chat là.
Merci en pile, mesdames. Bienvenue dans Rebrasser. Yon série chita parler sous affaires qui concernent Haïti que Haiti Response Coalition pote pour nous. Non Pam, c'est Naomi Labati et c'est un plaisir encore une fois pour moi là avec nous. Et avant nous même commencer le programme, moi t'aimerais inviter nous chaque prendre un moment de silence et vraiment réfléchir à la situation impossible que Haïti a pu vivre aujourd'hui à soir. N'a pas voué l'amour, solidarité et énergie positive pour toute Haïti. Merci. Merci en pile. Haiti Response Coalition ap di nou yon merci pour présence nou ak attention nou. Objectif série ça, c'est mettre lumière sur Haïtien ak e vrais amis Haïti qui pe travail pour nous pi bien comprendre qualité défi ak pays ak petit li yo ap traverser jounen jodi a. Petit li yo ket yo an dan ou bien de yo pays. Et en même temps, redéfinir, j'en nous parler de Haïti. N'a pe profiter remercier et partenaire nou yo, American Foundation for Democracy, Haitian Bridge Alliance, Roots of Development, Université des Atlantes, ak tout chokarela qui est de rendre programme ça possible. N'a rappelé nous que si nous avez des questions, tant pis, utilisez section Q&A qui est dans Zoom nan. Melinda APNG a contrôlé Zoom ensemble avec Chocarella. Donc, pas hésiter à poser des questions et voir ça là, un peu plus interactif que d'habitude. Thème nous pour asseoir, très pertinent, Haïti ak aide et stratégie pour nous ça autonome. Conversation ça viré autour de ça qui a passé dans aide humanitaire pays Etazini, trouver des défis qui existaient en Haïti à cause de ça, et puis moyen pour nous rendre Haïti plus jam pour nous ça reposséder l'indépendance que jadis nous te gagné dans la caille nous. Pour développer thème ça à profondeur, nous gagnons deux co-convention invités. Wolf Pamphile de Haiti Policy House. Haiti Policy House, c'est un think tank qui est spécialisé dans les affaires géopolitiques qui concernent le pays d'Haïti. Et aussi, nous gagnons Dr. Guerda Nicolas de Haiti Community Trust. Haiti Community Trust, c'est une fondation qui a pour supporter le développement et l'innovation durable en Haïti. Et puis, comme modérateur, nous gagnons Jake Johnston et Jessica Chou. Jake Johnston de Center for Economic Policy Research and lycée Hôtel Livre Aid State, Elite Panic, Disaster Capitalism, and the Battle to Control Haiti. Et Jessica Chou, c'est une anthropologue et chercheuse et collaboratrice de Roots of Development. Nape dit bienvenue. Jake et Jessica, you can take it away. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Naomi, and thanks for everybody showing up tonight and participating in the discussion. And just reiterate that I think our hope is to have a dialogue here amongst everyone. So I'll start with just providing a little background about USAID's programs in Haiti, how it operates, and then turn things over to Jess to take things from there. When we're talking about USAID in Haiti, the amount of money that is coming from USAID for programs related to Haiti has been around $350 million every year. To put this into perspective, last year, the Haitian government's budget was about 3 times this. So that's 1/3 of the Haitian government's budget coming from USAID. Now, obviously, these things function in very different ways. USAID, and I use specific language talking about this because it's not money spent in Haiti necessarily, or even for Haiti necessarily. That money goes to partner organizations, either for-profit contractors, UN agencies, and in very rare circumstances, local organizations in Haiti. And so we look at maybe a sort of more historical perspective here. In the 10 years after the earthquake, USAID spent between $2.5 and $3 billion for programs in Haiti. About 55% of that went to a handful of for-profit companies that are a whole lot closer to my office here in Washington, D.C. than anybody in Haiti. About 2.5% of that money went actually directly to local Haitian organizations. I think this is really important because, when we hear these big numbers thrown about, and it can seem really massive, really significant, but it's important to note that not all of that money is actually being spent in Haiti or even on behalf of Haiti, and certainly not Haitian communities. I think the other point, just to note like how this halt has, or the freeze, or however we want to refer to what's been going on with aid recently, has manifested itself in Haiti. There's been a lot of talk around waivers and things like this, but functionally, things have basically ground to a total halt. I was just looking at this last night. New obligations from USAID for work in Haiti. Last year, it was about no single month in 2024 had less than $8.5 million obligated from USAID. So far in 2025, it is $200,000, and that's for a contract position for an HR staff for the USAID Haiti office. So program spending has ground to a virtual halt. And this obviously is going to have an impact and already is having an impact on critical services in Haiti. Last year, USAID's budget, over 30% of it went to UN agencies. It's actually a little bit different than how it's operated in the past, and partially because of the context in Haiti. But these agencies are the World Food Program, the International Organization of Migration, UNICEF, and other big agencies that are doing a lot of work in Haiti right now in the current context. The health sector is perhaps the most reliant on external financing from across the board, any industry or any sector you want to talk about in Haiti. And there's going to be real impacts of that. But I think for today, we also want to shift the conversation beyond just those short-term things to have a longer-term discussion about this. And so before I turn things over to Jess, I just want to make one last point, which is that I think it's really critical to view USAID as one piece of a bigger picture of US foreign policy. This is not distinct from other aspects of US foreign policy. It is explicitly, and this is, it's not anything I'm making up or conspiracy. I mean, this is written on USAID's website, right? Its mandate is to promote US interests, economic and national security interests. And of course, it's not the only way the US promotes its own interests. And so I think when we look at USAID and we look at Haiti and we look at the dependency, this is also a natural result of the policies that have been implemented by the United States and others. And we're not just talking about aid policies that have undermined local capacity, but also conditionalities attached to big multilateral loans that enforce privatization or reducing tariffs that have hurt the agricultural sector. This is about the results of overturning elections. This is about the results of direct coups d'etats, right? And all of these aspects of US foreign policy that have really eroded local capacity and reinforced this dependency dynamic that we've seen take hold with aid in recent years. And so I just want to make that point, that this is not an isolated piece, right, or distinct from the rest of US foreign policy, but actually a significant component of it, certainly in a place like Haiti. So I will stop there and turn things over to Jess.
Thank you, Jake, for that summary. And for those who have not, I would really encourage you to read Jake's book, Aid States, really linking how aid and foreign policy are directly linked. So I just want to take a moment and talk a little about the term self-reliance. For this conversation, this is in direct contrast to dependency, which I would put forth is what the relationship to USAID funding was, and perhaps can even say it was aimed to be. Yesterday, I was talking to a colleague, and he made the analogy that USAID funding was like a drug that many thought that they needed. It was like an addiction, and suddenly it was not available. I certainly want to be sensitive to groups whose foreign assistance was focused on supporting grassroots organizations, as well as countless jobs that have been lost, especially of many Haitian professionals, as well as Haitian organizations who are faced with the potential of closing down and life-saving assistance that is now compromised. But I think we can all agree that USAID funding needed some serious reform. But this is not a conversation today to advocate for the return or not return of USAID funding, but rather one that really focuses on self-reliance and the support of it and breaking those created chains of dependency that Jake was just referring to. So a reminder that self-reliance is not new for Haiti. If we look into Haiti's history, we know there was 1804, the Haitian Revolution, and what followed was that Haiti inspired and supported many other countries to be independent and self-reliant. There are so many examples in Haiti's history of this self-reliance, from the building of the citadel to the creation of the language Creole. The list goes on and on. So we also know that Haiti has been historically a collective society, rooted especially in the countryside, and that is a bit messier now as migration has happened, inspired by centralization of not only the state and basic services, but the presence of international NGOs. Haiti has a history of mutual aid, solidarity, that we've seen in various practices, from Combit, the Lakou, Rassemblage, to mutual aid practices of Soul, etc. So if we look at top-down practices of aid, they've systematically broken down the social fabric. not only weakening communities, but civil society as a whole, as well as institutions, and has played a role in creating the current situation that we see of insecurity that we are witnessing in the metropolitan Port-au-Prince area and other isolated areas in the provinces. We can say that there was a large percentage of USAID funding that was also focused on crisis, which promoted a constant narrative of crisis, and these top-down practices ignored root causes and focused on short-term solutions rather than long-term, sustainable, transformative, systemic change. So crisis really ignores this continuum of life, and top-down aid breaks down, well, aid, a lot of aid breaks down, top-down aid breaks down the continuum of life into sectors. We have humanitarian aid, development aid, peace building, and even further into working groups such as protection, WASH, food insecurity, environment, economic development, etc. From my experiences, also, I've been doing recent interviews with funders, various funders that are supporting Haitian-led solutions, and more specifically, Haitian community-led solutions, many that are focused outside of Port-au-Prince. And I've witnessed, and many of these note the immense resources, assets, expertise, and capacities of local communities and their members. They also note that impact is not in direct relationship to the amount of external funding money, that sometimes the biggest impacts are with very little injections of external funding, because communities are working collectively to build social cohesion and to improve their communities and build a better and more sustainable future. With this, I believe this conversation is really important in redefining aid. What is aid and external assistance? One that is not based in charity, but really in solidarity to Haitian communities. This thinking is not new, nor these actions, but they need to become the norm. One of the commitments that resonates is one made at the World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul, Turkey in 2016, which birthed what is known as the Grand Bargain, with one of the commitments to localization that states, quote unquote, as local as possible and as international as necessary. So that's where I will stop for now. I want to turn it over to our fantastic panels. But before I do, panelists, I'm sorry. But before I do that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this forum. We want to leave a lot of space for discussion. So our panelists will make 2 short presentations, and then we'll go into Q&A. So I really encourage not just putting questions into the Q&A, but comments. So from there, I'm going to turn it to you, Wolf.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you, Jake. Dr. Guerda, it's great to see you again. Bonjour, bonsoir tout le monde. I don't know. I'm sorry. Sorry for the interpreters already. I don't know where you guys are this evening, but wherever you are, thank you for joining us. As we think about Haiti's path towards self-reliance, I want to begin by saying that no single person can claim to have all the answers to our challenges. And anyone who says otherwise is not being honest with you or with themselves. However, I believe that there are multiple pathways to addressing these issues. And despite the drastic shifts of in foreign aid, Haiti is currently has a very unique opportunity. It's an opportunity to unlearn, to re-educate ourselves on what it truly means to be independent, self-reliant, and also forward-thinking. And for over the past century, we've witnessed the unintended consequences of foreign aid. Unintended or maybe intended as well. From the weakening of the Haitian good to stifling local farmers who are struggling against imported, whether it's rice, beans, poultry, and fostering policies that go against economic growth rather than promoting it. And worse, I think it also enables the Haitian government to create a culture where, the government assumes the United States will act as a safety net for their poor policy decisions. So where do we go from here? And I think whether you are in Haiti, whether you're living abroad, creating spaces where policies are shaped by research and underground analysis is essential. And this very webinar we're on right now represents exactly what we're talking about, where ideas can be shared, debated, and most importantly, turn into action. And after all of that, accountability must be at the forefront of everything. We need policies that promote economic growth. We need policies that foster a fair business environment, that go against and curb, reduce monopolies, corruption, and also we need to rethink what foreign aid means, or how we approach, or how do we receive foreign aid. I don't believe this is the end of foreign aid, but from here on out, we need to start thinking about how do we make it work for us. And as we're thinking about this, any program that's being developed in Haiti, anything that's being viewed as foreign aid from whether it is the United States, Canada, or France, the program should be designed to work itself out of existence. Meaning, if, let's say, the program is supporting mango production, success for this program should mean that eventually the farmer no longer needs external support, meaning they can produce by themselves and support their families and also support the country for whatever needs that we have. And that should be the same methodology across different sectors, whether it's education, healthcare, business. And, right now, Haiti's future depends on us, and on us defining what self-reliance means, and also rooted in strong institution, economic opportunity, and also engage citizens, whether you are in Haiti, whether you are abroad, wherever you are in Chile, Brazil, France. And in my belief, I think this is the best way that we move forward from here, and also thinking about how we don't go back to where we were before. Thank you.
Thank you all for that. Gerda, I'm going to pass, Dr. Gerda, I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you so very much. And say, really wonderful. I know they ask us to try to stay in one language so we don't go back for the lovely interpreters. So will do my very best to stay in English so I don't go back and forth between the Creole. But nous connaissons assez langue là. Sans langue la caille, c'est langue la caille. Donc c'est difficile pour nous rester dans langue, une seule langue. But I'm going to try my very best overall. But thank you so much. I want to say thank you to this amazing group for hosting this conversation and to the opportunity to be on with Wolf. Always a pleasure to see Wolf and Jake as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I was so glad, Jessica and Jake, to see your opening and really helping us understand when we're talking about self-reliance, which is the theme of this of tonight's conversation, that this is not something that is new to Haiti, right? We're talking about USAID office, as an office that was open in the 60s, early 1960s, and everybody knows how long we've been independent. So clearly, we had not been relying on international aid to get a lot of the things that we got done in Haiti. So I think it's important, as we're sort of engaging in this conversation, that we remind ourselves how young the USAID office had been and how long we've been in existence as a country. And so really appreciate that as well, and appreciate the definition of self-reliance and reminding ourselves of what that means. I want to share with you my own sort of reflection, but also ground that in some of the research to go along with this particular theme for this evening. So when we're talking about self-reliance, because it is not a terminology that is unique to us, and really appreciate Wolf's ensuring that this is not a one-size-fits-all or one perspective at all. There's lots of different ways for us to think about this. But there's really good research that also has been done in terms of what do we mean by that, right? This idea about self-reliance, particularly what we're talking about vis-a-vis Haiti. So I want to share just a couple of key things that I think it means, and really looking forward to the larger conversation that we're having this evening. One of which is about strengthening local institutions. We can't talk about self-reliance without talking about the institutions and the need for us to invest in governance and our governance structure. We all know what the situation looks like from a governance standpoint. We can't continue to have a country that is going to thrive and that's going to be self-reliant when we have 9 individuals leading it. We have to pay attention to these things. We have to talk about infrastructure in the country. We have to talk about public services to ensure that Haitians have access to good quality education, healthcare, and so on. So strengthening local institutions must be a central part of that formula that we are talking about in terms of self-reliance, and the government has to be also at the center of that. The second thing is around encouraging economic growth. So really promoting entrepreneurship, small business, local industries, and so forth, and particularly in the agriculture and technology sector is really key. I just spent a lot of time understanding and studying the time when the United States was incredibly poor. And I don't know if many people remember those moments, or I've read on 19th century United States when it was life expectancy was really low and people were dying. The reason why we have child labor law in the United States is because young children had to go to work. But when we look at that research and that data, and you go back to history and take a look at that, it is clear that the things that got the United States out of poverty was the entrepreneurs, the people like Ford, the people like Sanger who created the sewing machines, the T-model cars and so forth. These were the things that were essential to really building an economy in the United States. And I think it's important for us to be mindful of that. The third thing I'll say is around investing in the human capital. By that, really it's about the quality education, providing education, but by that I mean like Haitian education, vocational training, building a workforce development is important. We have to think about reforming aid approaches, and I think Jess has talked a lot about that. We have to transition from this emergency humanitarian aid, and we're seeing the effect of that in our healthcare, as Jess mentioned, in country right now, because our healthcare system in Haiti is heavily dependent on this humanitarian aid. But how are we investing in capacity building and infrastructure in country around our healthcare system is really important. The last 3 things I'll say is around developing the sustainable agriculture practice. This is our bread and butter. We are really good at this, right? So how do we strengthen local food production? We all know that, and if you haven't seen the film out there around the Creole pig, we know the impact of a lot of things over the last couple of years in local production of a lot of different things. But strengthening our local production, investing in modern day farming techniques, and all of that is really going to be essential in terms of what self-reliance looks like for us in the future. And then strengthening community-led solutions, right? By empowering local organizations and grassroots movement, the things that Jess is talking about, that is tailoring to the specific needs. So when you're in a place like Touarac and outside of Camperin, or in a place, in Valley, like in Tigouave and other places, the grassroots organizations must be at the driver of leading development in their country. And the last thing I'll say is around enhancing the diaspora engagement. I see a lot of our colleagues who are joining us in the diaspora right now, and this encouraging investment in philanthropy from the Haitian diaspora has to be a central part of that. And that has been the work. That is where we at Ayiti Community Trust have spent the bulk of our time in the last 9 years around mobilizing the Haitian diaspora to really build a permanent fund, right, an endowment fund. So think about that for a moment when we're talking about self-reliance. It's like, how do we build a fund that is going to be there in perpetuity to support this grassroots community-led development that we are talking about, that is around ensuring sustainability in the long run. And to that process, and I'm sure we can have the larger conversation around that, is not only understanding the diaspora when even we're talking about that, and like even the word diaspora, it's all I'm learning may not be the appropriate word that we use because it has its own meaning and connotation even associated with it. But when we're talking about grouping of individuals, whether or not you're talking about that grouping here in the United States, which is incredibly diverse, so it's not monolithic. So we can't just talk about the diaspora as if we're moving one group, right? It's an incredibly different differences in terms of how you do that from those who are in Canada or those who are in Europe and other parts of the world as well. But we as Haitians, rather than that, no matter where we are in the globe, Haitians in Haiti, Haitians in, throughout the United States, Canada, and other parts of the world, have a central role to play in the kind of Haiti that we really want when we're talking about this self-reliance. And we certainly have some some good data to share in terms of what we've learned in terms of what that looks like in terms of mobilization of ourselves in the larger diaspora. But it certainly would be, I think it's an important conversation to have. This is not a conversation about what is it that we're asking other people to do for us. This conversation has to be about what is it that we're asking of ourselves. What is it that we're asking that we need to do, and the way that we need to do it, and the way that we need to show up differently, and to do so in a way that is a bit more collaborative and a bit more collective as well, which is actually essential as our model. So with that, I will say thank you so much, and I'm looking forward for the conversations. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, Dr. Nicolas. I am just going to go back to Wolf for a moment. So this conversation is not being had. I mean, I know many of us are having this conversation, but we also, Haiti Renewal Alliance also had a town hall on February 25th. And this in many ways is a continuum of that conversation. So I just want to turn it back to Wolf to sort of summarize that conversation before we go into more discussion. So Wolf, and just a reminder, slow down a little bit for the translators.
Sure.
That would be really helpful.
Awesome. So the town hall with HRA, the Haiti Renewal Alliance, was I think Jake's introduction and the presentation that I've done and Dr. Guerda has done as well, kind of summarized the overall message that we left with from that town hall. And essentially, it painted a picture of how Haiti got to where it is today, to relying or being like, a third of its economy depends on foreign aid. And also the impact that it's had on specific sectors, specifically the private sector and entrepreneurship, education, and what are the pathways to move forward into changing that dynamic in Haiti. I recommend everyone to, if you can, just go on YouTube and find that. I'm sure we can put it in the chat to watch that town hall, because it has a lot of great information. And I think one thing that I left with, one of the questions that I when the event ended, that I left with was, in the diaspora, when we're thinking about, especially now, the remittances and cash transfers going to Haiti, whether it is to Western Union, CAM, and that's from the diaspora. That is sustaining a lot of families in Haiti, or aunts, uncles, moms, and dads. But at the same time, that is also, from a strategic perspective, that is also a leverage that us in the diaspora have to advocate for a Haiti that we want to see. And now, how we do that, how we move that leverage, will be a discussion that we will need further research to do, because at the end of the day, it is real people that are at the end of those discussions. And the question that I left with was, for the diaspora, I mean, we've tried this in the past, but how do we successfully hold the Haitian government, the structure of that is the Haitian government, not the people, not the, well, of course the people too, but the structure, the institution that exists. How do we create an environment where accountability takes precedence? And also, how do we do that from abroad, from a distance? And while recognizing that we're not stepping in and dictate what should happen in Haiti, while working with our brothers and sisters who are in Haiti. But that is a broad question, and I'm also going to leave it to you all. If you have any thoughts about that, let me know in the chat. What are the ways that the Haitian diaspora can hold the Haitian institution, government institution, accountable from abroad? Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Wolf. Dr. Nicolas, Dr. Guerda, I'm calling you all kinds of names today. Do you want to respond to that before I go to questions in the Q&A?
No, I think that Wolf is posing a lot of really great questions, and I think what I would say, I'm going to try to be slow. I promise, Christelle. Sorry about that. I think it really is important for us to recognize that there has been significant interference in Haiti. So when Wolf, and that's why I'm excited about the Haiti Policy House, Wolf, because I do think that the Haitians in the diaspora has a significant role to play in terms of policies that oftentimes have been detrimental to an Haiti. And so I'm glad that I see Melinda's putting the information about the Creole pig in there, because I remember being in Haiti and watching my grandmother having to dig a huge hole to hide our pigs to ensure that they weren't going to be slaughtered simply because the United States didn't want its pig to be infected. People don't know those stories because there's a way that we are not connected to ways that the foreign policies have significantly impacted what is happening on the ground. And so thank you, Jake, for writing the book also, because it allows us the opportunity to, and for the work that you do, because we are the people who are voting people in positions of power who are voting on these policies. And it is important that we know and we are following them to ensure that we know how they're voting. Otherwise, we might be voting for people who are voting against our own best interests in Haiti. And so a lot of time when I'm talking to people and they say, okay, what are we doing in Haiti? I'm asking the question like, what are you doing here? Like, can you tell me who you voted for and how is this person voted on the agriculture, the farm bill that's been around for a very long time? The farm bill has been on the floor for a very long time. That has significant impact on Haiti. So okay, how are we paying attention to some of the things that are happening here? And I do think that that's really is important. And at the same time, we have to be thinking about, this is, to me, an opportunity that cannot be lost, colleagues. We cannot lose sight of that. While the United States is focusing on the United States, it is the time for us to be focusing on Haiti, right? It is, I don't know another example, and maybe somebody here can give it to me, of a country that went to another nation and helped it develop. I don't know a group of people who went to another nation who helped that nation develop. I don't know it. So it is in our hand to be able to think about, and not only think about, not only talk about the kind of Haiti we want, but to actually do the things that we need to be able to do. And again, with the recognition that we may not see it. I know that many of us here who grew up in Haiti had a lamb veritable, had a mango tree that was planted in the back of our yard. None of us planted the lamb veritable in the back of it, but we all ate from the lamb veritable in the back of our house that keeps on giving, even though the person who planted it is no longer here again. So we have to think for the future. We have to think the things that we are doing now so that 50 years from now, there's not going to be another, whatever technology is going to be used to talk about the effects of AIDS and Haiti, because we would have played our part in ensuring and not just talking about self-reliance in Haiti, but doing self-reliance, right, in Haiti as well. And for us to do so, I really do believe we have to be educated, because we just screened the Creole pig, Jess, here in Miami. We had a number of people showed up. It was the first time Haitians were hearing about the story about the Creole pig, right, ever. So it means that we need to do our own homework. We need to also invest the time to educate ourselves around both what has happened, the impact that has happened, but also recognize that the role that we need to play. So I'm excited about this time. I'm incredibly hopeful about this time, because I do believe that we as Haitians have everything we need to be able to do different, to act different, and be different. So I'm excited for the conversation. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to actually go into the Q&A, one of them that's been up and also answered. I just wanted to highlight it. And it says, I'm going to summarize the question. What is the best way someone like me, a Haitian American born in Haiti, living in the US, can help Haiti? And I know, Jake, you responded to this on the chat, but I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about this.
Yeah, thanks. And I mean, I think, Dr. Guerda was sort of getting at this too, right? Where the policies that are affecting Haiti are coming from here. And so that actually opens a huge opportunity for those outside of Haiti to play a really important role organizing here to change policies here, right? And I think this has been sort of the main focus of my work over the last 15 years is trying to make exactly that point that, and I don't think this is just for Haitian Americans or people with even connections to Haiti, but for anybody who wants to help and is not understanding how they can or doesn't think aid is working or doesn't want to just donate to the Red Cross or something. It's, organize to change US foreign policy, right? Like we can affect change here that will have a positive impact in Haiti without replicating those models of intervention that have happened over time, right? And so that means holding your members accountable, following what they're voting on, calling them to make sure they care about the things you care about, organizing rallies, town halls, and things like this to mobilize the community to push for change. Because as I think this is a tremendous opportunity for Haiti, but it also will, this moment in the US will not last forever. And so it's important to also be pushing for changes here that will create that space and make that space lasting for Haiti to be able to take advantage of that space and that opportunity.
Thank you, Jake. Wolf, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. This is a question, as somebody who was born and raised in Haiti, I was born and raised in Okap, and when I think about Haiti, I feel that question very much because we've all been at this point where something is happening in Haiti and we can't do anything about it because we are not there or we don't have the necessary skills or necessary, or even if we do have the skills, we don't know how to actually have an impact. I think one of the things that Haiti Policy House we've been doing the past year is empowering people. And by empowering people, I mean the Haitian diaspora or the Haitians living abroad is very vast. But how do we empower each communities, whether it is New York, whether it's Florida, Boston, how do we empower each of these communities to be able to go to Congress, to their local elected officials, say, hey, these are the policies that I want you to advocate for. In the past, since the year started, we've published a couple of briefs about different sectors, whether it is agriculture, mango, cacao, and for different folks who are interested in these topics, and with specific policy recommendations. And second, I would say we need to, one of the things that we want to do in the long term is also educate our community, educate them in terms of like, how do you create an advocacy movement? How do you pull together, whether it is your church, whether it is a school or a neighborhood, how do you gather people around one message and then go to the person or the people that needs to hear it and then get that message across? So I think through all that I've said, I think the most impactful part is educating people on how to advocate for themselves. And because we can say, we need one person, because I think, sometimes we need we need a leader, or the diaspora doesn't have a leader. I don't think that's the way to think about it, because there are hundreds of leaders or thousands of leaders in each communities, and each community believe in a couple of people or whoever it is. And I think also empowering those unique communities will also have a how you call it, like a multiplying effect into the larger picture of helping Haiti.
Thanks, Wolf. So I'm gonna jump into the Q&A here, and this is really more of a comment, but I'll read the comment and then open it up to the panelists. With U.S. disengagement and China's increasing global presence, the nation must craft a foreign policy that is neither naive nor reactionary, but instead grounded in national interest, economic self-sufficiency, and geopolitical pragmatism. So maybe I will add a bit of a question, which is this also an opportunity for Haiti and the Haitian state to diversify its allies, its friends in the international community?
Can I just jump in, Ralph, and then we probably come and I think it's also linked to Jackson McCullough's question also that's asking about around this question about neo, right, colonial also ideal as well, in terms of how do we break free from that, right, as well. So I think it's hard to answer that first part, Jake, without talking about like the need to also break free from what is currently in terms of that framework, what is currently in existence, and on how much time that we have to be able to do so. Because I do think that the neocol that has constrained Haiti since 1825, rightfully say, requires this multifaceted approach that must address this economic sovereignty that we're talking about, that's talking about political autonomy, cultural reawakening, right? Like that's the mental shift, the mental work that we have to do also in a strategic global positioning. And that gets at the question about like China right now. So let me repeat that. We need like a multifaceted, I think, approach that's really focusing on economic sovereignty, which decoupling from exploitative agreements. So by that, I'm talking about how do we repute the unjust debt and trade agreements that began back in the 1825, and so on. How do we strengthen the local economy, creating, parallel economic models, political autonomy and leadership accountability? How do we reject the foreign puppetry that happens in governance, right? How do we demand a level of transparency and accountability in our leadership while resisting this foreign intervention in political affairs? Developing self-sustaining political systems, reforming governance structure, as Rolf mentions. That's not my domain. That's not the area that I focus on, but I can't do what I do without understanding politics, which is important. Reclaiming control over our national policies. Right now, foreign-backed policies often designed to serve external interests, but not really focusing on stability and economic stability. Often, a lot of these sort of policies have led to instability in the country. And I'm so glad, Margaret Litton is here talking about both the pig issue, the rice issues, and so forth. These are things that have been detrimental to us, right? As well. When I'm talking about cultural and intellectual reawakening, we have to deconstruct the colonial mentality that we have. Centuries of foreign imposed narratives have contributed this psychological way. That's my area that we really need a shifting of our mind. We can't just talk about it, but it's the work that we have to do to reclaim our historical consciousness, by emphasizing our roots and so on. And lastly, which is the part that talking about, it's about strategizing this global alliance and economic peace. We have to forge relationship and cooperation beyond the US. There's a world out there, right, in terms of the kind of relationship that we really need to be able to develop. But for us to do all of that, we need amazing leaders. We need people who are thinking about country first, who are thinking, the best interests of Haiti, who are looking at, as the importance of us as a collective engaging in a national unity movement. It is time. We have to be mobilizing. We have to start resisting some of the stuff that we know hasn't worked for us, right? So engaging in some national unity movement, institutionalize some resistance against this neo-colonialism is really important. And really rebuilding trust in our national institutions, right? Because right now we've lost that, right? So Haiti must once again declare its independence, which we haven't seen, not just politically, but economically and intellectually and culturally as well. So there's a lot of work that we need to be able to do in order for us to also build those reliances and connections with this global world and the way that we are talking about it as well. So with that, I'll pass things over to Wolf.
Dr. G, like always, amazing. One thing I'll add, I'm just going to add one thing because I think you summarized it very well, Dr. G. I think we need leaders who are brave. I think we need people who can stand up and speak. I'll speak to my own personal experience being in DC and going to different events, whether it's at the UN or different small gatherings here in DC talking about Haiti. And you see the reactions of people who are representing Haiti and how when somebody who is white or lighter complexion than them walks into the room and their whole, persona changes. It's like they become like a little kid. They smile too much, they laugh at every joke, and they can't stand up for themselves. So when this person now says something about Haiti that is wrong, what is the likelihood of that person correcting this person? What is the likelihood of this person saying, well, thank you for this offer. I'd like to go back to my team and see how we can, move forward. And in the context of geopolitical, we can make no mistake, like China is no different than the US. And just because it is we want to diversify our friends and allies, we can't view China as like a savior. I think that's also part of the recalibration that we need to have, because out of all the countries in the world, there are 14 that recognize Taiwan as a country against China. And Haiti is one of the 14 countries. And Haiti is the country with the largest population that recognizes Taiwan. However, the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, all the Caribbean, I can say all the Caribbean, most of the large countries in the Caribbean do not recognize Taiwan. At the same time, they're doing business with China, they're doing business with the US, and in the middle, it's a competition for their attention, their space. And I think we need leaders who can understand this dynamic. We need people, we need researchers, we need students. I think when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking back 20 years ahead. The kids who's in college right now writing an essay about Haiti. How can they see, writing an essay today and then 20 years later be the person that puts it into action? And these are all the questions that we are always thinking about. And I think I also want to chime in on one follow-up. I believe someone talked about the churches, the possible roles you see Haitian churches, including universities and nonprofit, could play in Haiti. When election season comes around, you see your local council member, your Congress member, senator come to the church. They talk about Haiti. Haiti is a beautiful country. I've been to Haiti on vacation. I have a Haitian relative, and please go out and vote for me. There's a reason why they are in the church. There's a reason why they are reaching out to you in the community. And I think this is part of the educating ourselves and educating our people. Meaning, when this person comes to your church in this election season, you should say, okay, well, thank you for coming very much. I appreciate you taking the time to come to our church and to speak with us. Here's a one-pager of what we want. And when you can address these issues that we are interested in, that are impacting our country and our communities, then we can talk about voting for you. And I think that's the level of empowerment at the grassroots level that I'm talking about. And I think churches, schools can play a big role, because elections are won at the local level. And so when I'm talking about empowerment, that's what I'm talking about, and the role that churches can play.
So I just lost the question, but there is a question in the Q&A that says, I'm thinking of the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a kind of clearinghouse for a range of racial justice issues and reliable information like legal, political, advocacy, publications of reports, etc. What exists for members of the diaspora that might speak for what? 2 to 3 million globally? Question mark.
I see Patty. Hi, Patty. How are you? Hope you're well. So is the question around the fact that there is such a institute that exists in the US, what's the counterpart of that in Haiti? Is that what's the essence of the question? Because I think I'm missing it, Patty. Unless somebody else got it. Did you get it, Wolf? What's the essence of the comment? Is it?
Yeah, that was gonna be my question too. I'm not sure if they're asking if we have something like that for Haiti. If that is the question, I'll say this is the whole purpose of Haiti Policy House. We did notice, Being in DC, there are like hundreds and hundreds of think tanks. And while there may be some that focus on the Caribbean or Latin America, it's never always Haiti, you know, or even if it is Haiti, it's always Haiti because it's in the news or something bad happens. But we don't have a space that is thinking about, similar to the Southern Law Center, it has a specific focus on racial justice. Same thing for Haiti Policy House. It has a specific focus on Haitian foreign policies. And that's what we do 24/7. That's our entire, you know, existence, why we exist, why we created it. And I think that is also part of the self-authorship and also self-determination and self-reliance. And we can't rely on larger think tank to give us an hour of their time to have a panel on Haiti. If we want to have a month dedicated to Haiti, years dedicated to Haiti, we should have a space that can do that. So.
Thanks, Wolf. I'm gonna ask a question from the Q&A, but I'm gonna direct it to my fellow moderator, Jess, because I think it touches on some of the things you were talking about in the beginning, and I know some of the work that you've been doing and thinking about with regard to Haiti. But it was a question around the inter-Caribbean sort of solidarity and focusing on the Cuba medical brigades. And I just sort of want to piggyback on this concept of solidarity and how that might be one way to think about, you know, sort of a different approach towards aid more generally.
Thanks, Jake. I thought I was off the hook today. But I think, I mean, what we're talking about in terms of solidarity, right? We're talking about Friends of Haiti. I think some of the things that have been brought up by both Wolf and Dr. Nicolas, I think there's a level of education, understanding what is happening, doing your homework, really making the efforts to understand local realities and build relationships, build trust. I think these are a lot of things that we can do in terms of, you know, solidarity. I think also the other thing is we're fully aware of power dynamics, understand power dynamics that exist. An act of solidarity is really thinking about how we can shift those power dynamics that exist. How do we build equitable partnerships? How do we, you know, if we are trying to support and be in solidarity, what does it mean to highlight, you know, create a different narrative of Haiti that is filled with assets and expertise? Shift that notion of who is an expert. I think also, you know, think about language that we use. We see a lot of top-down aid using terms like beneficiaries, victims, right? These are really terms that create people as passive recipients and victims rather than actual agents of change, right? So when we think about these terminologies, I think these are all things that we need to reflect on. I mean, I can go on for quite some time around this, but I think, you know, their solidarity, I mean, Haiti, certainly, I mean, can use support, but friendships, real friendships right now. And I think that means understanding and balancing and complementing what exists, you know, like any sort of relationships. I've heard people describe these relationships as family, as marriages, as engagement, learning, holding each other accountable. And I think that's where I'll stop. I might also just open it to the other panelists.
I was just going to add one thing to what you were saying, Jeff. I think, because I really appreciate the conversation around this sort of like what's happening in the Caribbean right now, particularly the way that Barbados and others are responding regarding this idea about visa and Cuba and so on, right? There is a part of this that means like self-sacrificing, that is tenacious. For gen fam pou gen fam ki gen fam ki gen fam, right? Like you have to get to that place where there's a level of principles and there's some things that you are willing to live for, right? I mean, we all know what's been the relationship of Cuba to Haiti and in places like Venezuela to Haiti, right? In other places. So when we are not able to stand up for our own principles and we're not willing to sacrifice our own thing for that solidarity, it really is important. In the conversation that you are seeing that's taking place right now is the ability of saying, I'm willing to sacrifice the privileges that has been given to me, right? For the purpose of this solidarity, for the purpose of that sort of being together and coming together and so forth. And that is in the midst of a region where we have been divided, that there was intentionally the idea that Bayesians and Jamaicans and and folks from Bahamas were not going to come together as a collective, right? For the larger good of the regions and so forth. And let me tell you, man, once we get it right and we get our mind right and we are able to see that this is one region, one house, and we're able to come together, I think the world is going to be shaken by what is possible and so forth. But for that to happen, man, for nous mettre femmes sous femmes, for nous mettre femmes sous nous, like garçon encore, right? For nous assurer que we can really, come together in such a way.
So, Involved, there's a question in the chat that says, should Haiti reject all foreign aid and take the painful but necessary steps towards economic and political self-sufficiency, even if it means short-term hardship?
I can take a first shot at this. I think it's tough. The radical in me would say yes, like let's stop all of it, and then take the hard pill. However, we must also understand where a country is economically and the people that are most likely to suffer from this. And if we are to do that, what is the plan after that? And what is the plan? I mean, I'm all for stopping foreign aid, but what is the plan? How do we now ensure that the services, like if a woman needs to give birth, like there's still a functioning room, delivery room that it can receive them. If a kid needs some kind of urgent care, that there's still something that can help them survive. And sure, and idealistically, we could say, oh yeah, let's stop all of it. But what is the you still have 11 million people that needs social care, that needs schools, that needs all these different things. But I think, how do we move from a foreign aid to strategic partnerships? How do we now say, hey, you can come build this school, but you have to sign an agreement that for the next 20 years, you will be there are consequences to not following through to development in Haiti. There shouldn't be an issue where somebody builds a school, or an organization builds a school, and then 2 years later they run out of funding and the school just sitting there, or a hospital. And there should be consequences to these things. And I think moving away from foreign aid is critical for our development. But however, ripping the Band-Aid without a plan can create a bigger issue than what we're trying to solve.
Thanks, Wolf. I think that covered a lot. I'd just add a few things, if I might. And I think one is that, right, not all aid is the same. Right, there is foreign assistance coming into Haiti that is supporting really important grassroots and community-led work. Right, still today, it's not coming from USAID generally, right? But when we talk about foreign aid, we're not just talking about USAID. Right, there's a lot of it, and so I think it might be perfectly reasonable to reject harmful aid, right, which is its own basket of aid and very different from other forms of aid. And I think, I go back to something you said earlier, Wolf, right, that aid. And we hear this from people. This was the big talking point after the earthquake, right? We're working to put ourselves out of a job, right? In the aid industry. And so I think that's an important concept in this too, right? Is like, even if you want to get to a point where Haiti is free from aid, from USAID specifically, if we just want to talk about USAID, a very reasonable position to take. Well, you're saying there needs to be a plan. And part of that plan is, I think, or can be, right, changing the aid that is coming so that it can actually help get you there, right? And so I think part of this conversation is also how can we change aid? Not reject or accept or cut off entirely or not, but what can be done to make the aid that does come more effective to actually leading to a future where Haiti is not dependent on that aid, right? So it's a nuanced conversation, obviously, right? But I think it is important to note, there's a lot of good things that happen too, right? And again, it's not all coming from USAID, but we can't put all of that into the same basket.
Thank you, Jake.
Can I just make one reference point just before you move on? I think it really is important for people to go on and see the last town hall. If you fast forward to the presentation that Kessner did to really highlight that exact question, because he really highlighted from an economic standpoint, where is the country right now? And I think once you integrate everything that Wolf just said, along with which healthcare being a central part of it, then we really have to think about the immediate needs that we need to address, but recognizing that a long-term plan, a medium and long-term plan is needed, but at the same time that the immediate issues are real. We have a healthcare system in country that is heavily dependent on external aid, right? Foreign aid to be able to support it. And we can't just say no to that, because it means that a lot of lives are going to be impacted by that, right? But we recognize that that model doesn't work and we have to do differently by it. So Kessner's presentation that brings in the economic part of this to see it, I think provides a compelling response in terms of what we need to do differently in the country.
Thank you, Dr. Nicola. I am going to turn to our lovely host, Naomi, who I think has a question for Dr. Nicola.
Merci, Jessica. Oui, Dr. Nicolas m'a posé une question en créole. Nous connaissons qu'on travaille en pile en Haïti, tout partout en Haïti. D'après ça observé, et qu'est-ce qu'on a partagé avec nous? Parlez-nous un peu de ça observé dans le pays en dehors. Comment habitant, t'es toujours mettre presque totalement autonome et comment nous-mêmes nous capables d'appuyer ou bien supporter système qui est déjà établi.
Dr. Nicola, before you go into that, can I just tag on to that question a little bit?
Yeah.
Really maybe ask you to highlight some of the work that some of the partners of ACT that they're doing, and really talk about impact in relationship to community resources assets. So I just want to tag that on to Naomi's question, if that's okay, Naomi.
Thank you so much. Merci un peu, Naomi, pour question, parce que nous faisons façon, tout le monde connaît, moi, dans le pays à chaque mois, femme là quand même, et me toujours dit, bon bâtiment quand même que me prend, même si on bloqué, ben, travel à propos de avion, yo, de façon quand même pour nous aller dans le pays. Et il fait partie tout de questions que nous avons posées à propos de qui gens, là, la diaspora pense qui gens les mêmes qui sont engagés en Haïti. Nous pas qu'à engager dans le pays à Simpel en même temps. Ouais, Simpel à Kaï, moi, pas qu'à engager là dans même façon. Donc, pour un bon exemple, nous faisons pas son bon temps pour m'aller la Gonave, Fondé Blanc, Fondé Noir, m'aller Trois-Lacs, m'aller Lièvre, dans le département NIP. Nous t'évaluons, ouais, tout côté ça, yo. C'est une façon pour nous, ouais, que il y a un peu l'activité qu'a faite. Ça veut dire que paysan levé là, le planter. Il n'est pas planté parce qu'il pensait que le pays fini. Il planté parce qu'il pense qu'on est demain cap vini. Et qui j'en la mette petite l'école. Tout ça. Et il y a un peu tout, même rencontre qu'a faite, que des pensées, que des gens qui pensé dans la section communale en même temps pour regarder qui type de futur, qui gens yo même y a pas avancé. Parce que Jean-Jacques te dit, ce n'est pas des communautés qui te dépendent de ça États-Unis t'a fait. En pile là-dedans, ils n'ont pas touché ça qui a sorti dans USAID là, en même temps. Ça veut dire que pas de une grosse conversation à propos de oh bon Dieu, qui ça nous pourra le faire à ce moment-là parce que USAID est fini. Et donc, c'est mettez tête ensemble ça, solidarité ça, penser ensemble ça, il est toujours là. Et il y a une pile innovation qu'a fait. On t'es passé de participer dans des rencontres extraordinaires qui t'a parlé à propos de infrastructures qui étaient supposées développer dans le sud là, qui fait partie des ports, qui fait partie des airports là, tout ça là dans les. Ça veut dire que et pas chita moun ap chita pour yo tan qui ça pral venir pour yo. Gen en pile réflexion qu'a fait et puis en pile innovation qu'a fait en même temps. Et ça nous même n'a fait dans Haiti Community c'est qui gens nous ka supporter innovation ça yo pour nous scale them up. So imaginez que ou ka commencer non façon bon exemple par exemple. N'a regardé pour nous n'a fait et œufs en Haïti. Right? Un pays qui te compte produit propre poulet pali, œufs pali, 80% œufs a importé sorti de Saint-Domingue. Qui pas fait sens pour nous dans le pays. Donc, imaginez qu'on y a, si nous avons supporté, nous avons un programme de produits et pour les panneaux dans le pays avec eux dans le pays qui marché, et nous essayons de faire pilote ça avec Soadec dans 15 coffres dans la zone ça, qu'on y a regardé pour nous, ok, nous aller avec les Jacques Mel organisation là, qui ont même système ça marche, qu'on y a vu augmenter production ZEA, qu'on y a allé dans 3 racks et lièvres pour nous comme mettons l'autre encore, qu'on y a nous dans pestel, qu'on y a avec organisation côté n'a, qu'on y a ouvert un incubator, un écosystème avec des organisations qui travaillent dans poulet avec eux, qui permettent qu'on y a augmenté li. Et ce qui ça qui est vraiment intéressant pour moi-même, c'est que nous tester est-ce que si nous vendons ce pays plus cher que œufs qui sorti œufs blancs, nous tout qui là connaît soit Haïti ou connaît œufs blancs côté le sorti et brown eggs là côté le sorti, right? Donc nous regardez pour nous est-ce que œufs sorti dans pays si nous mettons le plus cher que œufs blancs, est-ce que moun local yo a acheté? Naomi li vend plus vite que œufs qui sorti Saint-Domingue. Ça veut dire que moun local yo reconnaître que œufs ça sorti la caille moins, poulet ça sorti la caille moins, et en pile fois, et nous tout la connaît que œufs ça yo plus bon. Parce que œufs qui sorti Saint-Domingue, l'am croisé li pas kon ça me joindre là-dedans. Ouais, en pile fois. Même connaît zo local la cap sorti côté m'acheter là dans mes paysans, on connaît qui type de œufs, qui type de poulet lié. Donc ça montre que créer écosystème ça dans affaire. Imaginez qu'on y a ou gagner et 20 différentes qualités zones qui fait même système, même standard, même là en même temps. Qu'on a testé encore dans miel, right, avec miel parce que qu'on a une organisation miel qui dans zile et la Gonave là, nous gagnons une Jacques Mel, gagnons une Fondé Blanc, gen yon kounya qui nan noa nous fait qu'à visiter tout pour nous dire imaginez créer un écosystème de miel, right, et ABA qui ka vendre localement. Ça veut dire que faut un produit qui ka vendre qui nécessaire qui peut le permettre ça. Qui ça peut le monter? Qui côté li ka aller? Imaginez kounya sou gagner et écosystème de poulet sa yo avec œufs qu'a fait dans pays ou gon écosystème de miel qu'a fait dans pays kounya ou ka gen distribution center because nous même qui moun qui de yo qui a les public stop and shop qu'a acheter œufs c'est pas public qui fait son côté à l'acheter kounya yo vin distributors so imaginez kounya ou gen facilities qui that are eco-friendly, right, that are environmentally friendly côté qu'on y a fait pop 14 œufs par ou, right? Imaginez qu'on y a ça c'est plus job, qu'on y a créé peut-être bag yo pour l'acheter là-dedans ou qu'a fait dans pays plus job ou qu'a même répéter même bagay là avec miel là, qu'on y a fait miel dans le supermarché là regarder pour combien différentes qualités bouteilles miel qui gagne ou qu'a fait propre bouteille miel dans pays ouais, tout ça yo c'est montrer c'est qui ça qui possible les nous venir ensemble nous comme on font bagaille en collectif, right, en solidarité qui ka scale up, qu'on y a sous créer ça, c'est qui type d'investissement, qu'on y a le fait qu'on y a un écosystème de œufs aider pour les or écosystème qui produit même et miel là qui est standard là qui utilise même équipement qui utilise même bah là qu'on connaît le cavane Naomi qui vini comment investir avec 10 millions de dollars c'est pas 10 millions Naomi gagne seulement là vient avec 100 millions de dollars pour dire moi je voulais investir dans ce programme comme ça parce que je connais my return on investment is going to be high right la venir là-dedans c'est tout je pense que ce type de activité ça que je pense que nous-mêmes nous pas seul gain l'autre qu'a fait en même temps que si nous-mêmes nous mettons ensemble je pense que nous avons vraiment développé un programme économie qui va supporter ni et qui peut supporter produit local là et qui peut le vendre local et qui peut exporter dehors parce que je connais nous tout le monde là connaît miel là et tout le monde connaît pour les pays donc c'est des exemples ça c'était que merci un peu pour question.
Thank you, Dr. Nicolas. So we're going to go to one last question. I see there's other questions in the Q&A, but I'm also very conscious of time. So I'm going to pass it to Jake to ask this last question. And then we'll ask the panelists each to have to present some closing remarks.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Yeah, so the question I wanted to ask here from the chat is about the push for reparations and sort of how that fits into this narrative. And I'll add my own brief commentary before I turn it over to you, because I think, in a lot of ways, we can almost view aid in a similar way, right? Is that aid is responding to historical harms from the developed world, from the United States specifically, right? And that's not how it's actually framed, but I think it's the sort of moral reasoning or rationale for why aid should continue in some regards. And so I think it does sort of fit in with this conversation about reparations. And given the governance situation, right, how does that sort of fit into this conversation? So yeah, with that, I'll turn things over.
Yeah, I think when we think about reparations, I remember when I was a kid in Haiti when Ayiti was doing the TV commercials for réparation. I forgot there was a song that came along with it. I forgot what it was. Reconstitution, 3 million. I forgot the exact song, but I remember seeing it on TV, and I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that was. I was about what? I was a kid essentially, but as we're thinking about reparations today, I think the challenge is that we're not in the age of morality, given the way that the world is going and seeing how the US, how the other countries are interacting with their former colonies. I don't think that we should approach this from a place of morality. I think we should approach this from a strategic end to say, it's not a direct line, but how do we create a situation where you're not just doing us a favor by giving us reparation, but you're doing it because you have to. And I think that's how I think about reparations and how to get reparations. I think Haiti needs to have reparation. Reparation is a must. I just don't think that we need to be nice about it or ask, hey, please give us reparations. No, I don't think that's how we should go about it. I think we need, like I said, create situations where it is in the best interest of the other party to give the reparations. So that's how I'll answer this question.
You know what I mean? Like, let me just say this on record, because I do think that there's some folks who are working at the reparations. I've been a part of a group that University Data that is being led by Mark Poole and others, as well. There's a whole group of people who are really focusing on this reparation piece, particularly as it pertains to France. They've been working at it. They meet regularly, to be able to think that through and so forth. That's important. It is important because it is about justice. Right? We have to recognize the wrong that has been done, and we have to hold people accountable for them so that they don't repeat themselves in the future. But we certainly cannot wait around waiting for the reparation money to come, right? Because when people have the money in their pocket, it's really hard for them to actually want to give it away to other people. So I would imagine that might be take some time, but the process is important. right? The process is important, the education is important, you know, making sure that we continue to be in the highlight is really is important. So I applaud that effort. I'm just not waiting for the money to show up on my doorstep. That's all.
Thank you. So I'm gonna go back to you, Wolf, for some closing remarks first, and then we'll go to Guerda.
You know, I mean, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. You mean, you could have been anywhere else, but you're here with us. And, you know, I am truly grateful for spaces like this where we spend time to think about Haiti. You know, as a Haiti Policy House, a think tank, we spend a lot of time to this evening. So every Wednesday we meet weekly for we have this meeting where we call Sparking Ideas. So that's what we would be having tonight if I wasn't here. But I want to leave you all with the concept of act locally, organize regionally, and think globally. And by that, I mean acting locally is the same concept of when I was talking about the churches. The churches, we are a people who are heavily in churches. I would say that's our potomita in our communities in the US and also around the world. If you need to find Haitian, just find a Haitian church, and then you'll be taken care of. So I think that should be at the grassroots level. That's the way that we can organize ourselves to think, to influence policies where we live, whether it is in the US, if you are wherever you are. I think influencing policies that are impacting Haiti starts at the local level, and also planning regionally in terms of at the macro level. How does Haiti interact with the rest of the Caribbean, with CARICOM? And what are the partnerships that we need to have with other countries, specifically with now seeing the visa situation within the Caribbean. And yesterday I saw a speech by the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago for, they're pretty much like Dr. G said, sacrificing themselves for the respect for their country. And thinking globally, in the sense of thinking about Haiti and its place in the global, that is not solely as a recipient of foreign aid, but how do we engage? How do we produce leaders that can engage at an equal level? How do we ensure that Haiti's voice is heard in global level, in global forums, and also having leaders that other leaders respect, and that can stand for something and mean what they say. So I'll end here. Like I said, I'm truly grateful for you all. Again, my door is always open. Haiti Policy House is a house for all, and it will be started like this, and it will always be like this till the wheels fall off. So hopefully they never do. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Thank you, Wolf. And Dr. Nicolas?
Thank you so very much. Thank you, everybody. And I'm excited. I can't wait to go knock on the Policy House. Though I'm hoping there's some grill and Poisson Gosello and Villa Kaila when you get to that house as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share a few words with all of you as well. I think while the aid situation has provided us an opportunity to come and have conversations with each other, Haiti's struggle is not just about geography, right? It's not about this, it's about aid, it's about its people, its history, and its future. And the Haitian diaspora hold an immense power, but power without strategy is waste potential. The same spirit that led Haiti's independence must now be channeled into a modern movement of accountability, of governance reform, and economic self-determination. And so I want to leave you with like 4 calls for action tonight. One is about how do we move beyond individual survival, right? The survival mentality has kept many of us focused on our personal well-being rather than the collective progress. And so we as a collective must recognize that no true success is possible while the homeland remains in a state of crisis. So we cannot afford to put a blind eye in what's happening in Port-au-Prince. And so we must really, focus on that. The second thing I'll say is unity for impact is crucial. So fragmentation weaken efforts. a strong, organized movement can demand political representation, influence international policy, and shapes Haiti's governance from in and out of the country. Third is around leveraging our economic power for change. Remittance alone, wouldn't build a nation, but strategic investment, cooperative enterprises, and economic pressure on corrupt officials can shift that balance, right? And then lastly, we must use every platform to hold leaders accountable, whether or not it's to advocacy, media, or political pressure. We must play an active role in shaping Haiti and impacting, foreign policies in the country. Our ancestors sacrificed everything to break free from colonial chains. The question today is whether or not Haitians at home and us abroad are willing to do the same thing, not through war, but through leadership, through unity, and a relentless demand for justice. Haiti does not need saviors. It needs Haitians who are willing to lead, willing to serve, and willing to build. And I hope all of you will join in that movement. Thank you so much.
Powerful. Merci en pile, merci Wolf Pamphile et au Dr. Guerda Nicolas pour tant nous, pour travail que nous avons fait aujourd'hui pour avancer pays. Merci. Et merci à Jake Johnston avec Jessica Chou pour facilitation de discussion que nous avons besoin si tellement. Et merci à Christelle et Shirley. Des besoin corriger non, Shirley, merci en pile. Et merci à partenaire nous, qui c'est Haitian American Foundation for Democracy, Haitian Bridge Alliance, Roots of Development, Université des Atlantes, HSC qui vient joindre nous, à tout chocare là qui aide à rendre le programme ça possible. Suivez-nous, Haiti Response Coalition sur Instagram, Facebook, pour nous connaître l'autre programme cap gagné dans l'avenir. Nous avons rendez-vous pour 2 avril à 6h30 pour nous discuter un autre sujet qui est pertinent encore, qui c'est phase transition en Haïti, route pour nous aller dans l'élection et puis voyager sous constitution. Pardon. Et nous pas penser à PEP. Nous avons passé travail si tout Port-au-Prince à Clatibonite. Nous disons courage, Kimbela, et puis bonne nuit, et nous rencontrons encore le 2 avril. Merci en pile pour présence nous à soir. Au revoir.